I don't know why I decided to take that winding back road on my way home from my friend's house. It was late, past midnight, and I just wanted to get home as quickly as possible. The main highway would have been faster, but something compelled me to take the long way. Maybe I thought the country roads would be safer and less busy at this hour. I couldn't have been more wrong. Immediately, I turned onto the narrow two-lane road flanked by thick woods on either side, and an uneasy feeling crept over me. My headlights only illuminated a few feet ahead, and I had to drive slowly to avoid potholes that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was so dark that everything beyond the reach of my beams was swallowed up in inky blackness. The radio static and lack of cell service left me feeling completely isolated. I drove for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 30 minutes. The farther I drove, the thicker the forest grew around me. Bare branches clawed over the road, forming a suffocating canopy overhead. Soon, I realized I hadn't passed another car or even a house in ages. A heavy fog rolled in, reducing visibility even more. I slowed to a crawl, squinting to see even a few feet in front of my bumper. My pulse quickened, and my hands grew slick with sweat on the steering wheel. Where was I? How long had I been driving? In my unease, I hadn't paid attention to the time or landmarks. Just when I considered stopping and turning back, my headlights illuminated a weather-beaten sign ahead, pointing to a narrow road cutting through the trees to the right. Service road, it read in fading letters. That had to lead to some kind of gas station or larger highway, I hoped. Taking a deep breath, I turned down the even tighter, unpaved road. Almost immediately, I felt the tires slip off the side of the road into the muddy ditch. I jerked the steering wheel to pull back onto stable ground, but overcorrected, causing the whole car to spin out. My scream pierced the stillness of the night as I slammed on the brakes, coming to rest sideways across the path. The engine cut off, leaving me in utter darkness except for the red glow of the dash, lighting up my panicked face. I fumbled to restart the car. It sputtered and struggled, but refused to turn over after stalling out. My breath came in frightened gasps that fogged up the windows as I frantically cranked the engine again and again. Click, 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 but no turnover. The battery must have been damaged when I hit the ditch. I was stuck out here in the black wilderness all alone. Realizing there was no way I could get the car running again tonight, I weighed my options. I could lock myself in safely and try to sleep here till morning when hopefully another traveler would pass. Or I could bravely exit the car and try to find help on foot despite having no cell signal. Neither seemed like a good idea given how isolated the road was, and difficulty seeing more than a few feet in any direction. As I sat there paralyzed with indecision, movement outside my driver's side window made me catch my breath. Something had darted behind a tree, graceful and quick on four legs, from what I could tell in the split-second view afforded by my headlights. A deer most likely, I reasoned, blowing out a sigh of relief. But then I heard a chilling, utterly inhuman cry echo from the blackness, part hiss, part wail. No deer makes a sound like that, I thought with growing dread. I froze, listening intently past the pounding pulse in my ears for any sign of animal movement. The rustling grew closer, and I could make out heavy panting and occasional snarls permeating the otherwise dead silence of night. Terror gripped me as I realized with sudden clarity that something was circling the car. Fumbling beneath my seat in desperation, my fingers closed around the tire iron stashed there for emergencies. I clutched it tightly with one hand, while cranking shut the window I had rolled down earlier for the cool night breeze, shut with the other, slamming down the locks right as I saw two glowing eyes appear from the woods. A monstrous creature that seemed half wolf, half human, but grotesquely distorted approached the car, saliva dripping from slavering jaws, lined with pointed fangs longer than my fingertips. It was like no beast I had ever seen. Some ungodly genetic experiment gone wrong, or mythical monster brought to life to prowl these lonely backwoods, preying on lost travelers like me. I whimpered and shrank back against the far door, as far from the nightmare apparition as possible, raising the tire iron in my fist like a weapon, despite its uselessness against this hulking predator. The wolf thing seemed almost to smile, red eyes hungry and cunning. It knew it had cornered helpless prey. My fate was all but sealed. Moving deliberately as if to prolong my terror, it began encircling the car again, seeking the easiest access point. Its long, gangly arms that almost reached the forest floor seemed capable of ripping a locked door from its hinges, if sufficiently motivated by hunger. Ragged claws scraped along the windows and metal frame, making me flinch in anticipation of the glass shattering under the unbearable tension. With no chance of being rescued way out here, I pulled my knees to my chest and cowered behind the steering wheel. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks as the beast paused to rear up and unleash an unearthly howl of triumph, sending shockwaves of renewed horror through my core. The last shreds of hope I clung to evaporated. Whether it took minutes or hours for those slavering jaws to close around my throat almost didn't matter anymore. I was already dead inside. I wept for the gruesome death that seemed inevitable until sheer exhaustion dragged me down into restless unconsciousness. I awoke sometime later to daylight streaming through the windows and absolute stillness outside. I wasn't dead, or even hurt as far as I could tell. No sign of the creature remained, except long scratches down the driver's side, and a lingering animal stench permeating the cold car interior. The events of last night seemed like a terrible dream, but the tangible damage and my pounding headache testified to their reality. I scrambled from the vehicle, disoriented and ears pricked for the slightest sound of movement in the surrounding brush. Silence greeted me, utter silence void of birdsong or insect hum, where normally a forest teems with wildlife symphonies. Even the trees themselves looked sickly and bleated in the grim morning light. Nothing about this place seemed natural or inviting anymore after witnessing the unnatural predator that called it home. Not eager to linger, I set off on foot down the muddy track that passed for a road, one eye peering constantly over my shoulder for predators giving chase. The hike back to civilization felt far longer than my panicked drive had been last night. I refused to stop to rest my tired legs or catch my breath, urgency fueling my weary legs mile after mile. I nearly cried in relief when at long last the forest opened up, revealing paved highway ahead. My ordeal was over, and I was delivered back to the land of the living, after being certain I would die brutally and alone in that haunted forest. I strode towards the promised road, joy and profound gratitude lending speed to my steps, until I glimpsed the battered "Welcome to Arcadia" sign ahead and froze in my tracks. That couldn't be right. I'd been hoping to find myself near my hometown of Evansdale, several counties south of here. But according to the sign, I was over 40 miles off course. How could I have possibly driven so far through the night and not realized? None of it made any logical sense. Unless I hadn't just stumbled onto a strange, forgotten back road last night. Almost against my will, my eyes were drawn westward towards the shadowy tree line I had just escaped, straining for any proof of the unnerving suspicions solidifying in my mind. And that's when I spotted it, writhes of unnatural mist seeping from between the gnarled trunks, defying the breeze, beckoning me back towards the peril I had barely fled with my life just hours ago. Sudden certainty struck me like a blow. That winding, treacherous road flanked by ancient looming pines had not been of this earth. I had unwittingly stumbled into a transient place, a hungry waiting trap that had nearly consumed me among its ghostly trees where time and space bend. I had escaped one reality on the precipice of a gruesome fate, only to emerge into another where I remain irrevocably changed, marked. I can feel the cold brand of that unholy forest somewhere deep in my psyche even now, a lingering trauma I carry forth like a curse. I sometimes wonder if I hadn't been permitted to escape at all, but only temporarily released to lure others back to feed that endless evil. A living ghost haunting the highways at night, compelled to relay my cautionary tale to fellow travelers before inevitably vanishing once more into those damnable woods from whence I came. But for now, at least, I am still flesh and blood awake in your world. So please, listen now, dear reader, while you still can, and hear my warning well. Beware the back roads at night.